Welcome to part 3 of how to draw a portrait in pencil. As shown in the last video, I created all my measurements and even marked out areas where there are some shadows. Before I start shading, I'm going to go and erase the background. This will help show the middle tone in the face more visibly and define the head more easily. Use the eraser by moving towards yourself in one direction so as not to crumple or wrinkle your paper. Now we can use the eraser to start marking out some of the highlights in the face. Do this lightly at first to test how much to remove. I'll start off here in the forehead and then do the cheek area next. Later, you will probably need to slightly smoothen the gradation with a pencil. So I'll go around the whole portrait looking for these highlight areas. Once you do this, you will notice that the form of the head and face starts to get more noticeable, especially against the middle tone that we created. So I have my blending stump or turtle on, and I'm going to start shading. Some people like to start left to right so their hand doesn't smudge their work, but I like to work all over the place. I start with the darkest tones first, or the eyes. Notice I keep my photo next to my drawing so I can constantly refer to it. This will probably be my darkest tone. It's almost black. You need this in your work as it just enhances the other tones. Look out for the reflected highlights in the eye as well. Go on to the other areas of the eye, like the eyelid and the skin fold. Constantly look at your photo and draw what you see or observe. Pay attention to the eyelashes and the direction of the strokes. It will most likely not be individual lines, but clumps of dark tone. Now I get my rubbing stump to smoothen this a bit and get the stump itself a little dirty. To use it properly, place it on an angle so to keep the point longer lasting. You do not need to press very hard with it. Students often think if they rub harder, it will get darker. The only way it's going to get darker is if you place more lead on your paper. Once the stump gets a bit dirty, you can also use it to add some other tones in the area too. This helps build smoother gradation. When adding your tones, it's better to build it up gradually in layers instead of pressing very hard immediately. It's easier to add than to try and take away and erase. Once you use the blending stump in areas, it is advised to go over it again with your pencil. As you rub, you slightly lighten the tone, and at times it needs redarkening. Naturally, you should also be aware of how much pressure you apply. The lighter the pressure, the lighter the tone you create. As said before, this is not necessarily true with darkening though. I like to look at my work upside down sometimes. It helps me notice things that I would normally miss. I'm also looking for the other ultra black areas to do. I would normally go on to the next eye, but since it has a large shadow area, I'll probably leave it to later and go onto the mouth or nose instead. After that, I'll then start shading in some of the areas around the face. So just like the eye, here with the nose, I'll start again with the darkest areas. Of course, this will be the nostrils. Note again where I place my photo in relation to my drawing. The nose doesn't have many lines. The form of the nose is created through shading. Having the tones and gradation is what makes lines appear. Note as I draw, I will not have any outlines of areas to construct the nose. Just do a little bit at a time to see how it looks and build it up slowly. Remember, it's easier to add than to take away. As I go on to the mouth, again I'll start off with the darkest area first. For the eyebrow, I build it up slowly. If you look closely, there are not many individual hairs apart from the beginning and towards the end of the eyebrow. You're most likely to have groups of darker tones in the middle. I just create a slightly darker tone at first and then go to those darker areas after that. I'm not trying to create this area in one attempt. Instead, as mentioned, I'm building it up with gradual darker tones or layers. I'm also going to use the corners of the eraser to create the illusion of some individual hairs and highlights. There is the possibility that your drawing hand may smudge your work. If this is the case, you can simply put another piece of paper over the area you have already drawn to protect it. Next, I'm going to start shading in the other eye. Now I'm returning to the mouth to darken it a bit more and add more shadows. Because I've added more darker tones, I've noticed I need to go back to the eye and darken that further too. So I also notice my skin tone needs to be slightly darker, so I add some pencil shading here lightly, just like when I toned my paper. I don't think my middle tone will cover the crosshair line I've drawn, so very carefully using the edge of the eraser, I'm going to try and take it away. I do this delicately and try to keep it to a minimum. Now I just get my tortillon or rubbing stump and gently go over it again and try to fill it in. If you need to add more pencil, do it lightly. For the ear, I first block out the basic line or shapes that I see, and then start to shade them in. I'll move on to the other side of the head and place a paper over my work to protect it. Now just darken some of the skin further. I usually do the hair last, as it's the most difficult. I'll go into this further in the next video. In this video, you've witnessed 1 hour of drawing which has been compressed into about 8.5 minutes.